any more programs?
Tell you what, I'm gonna stand up front and I'm gonna look to the back.
Sure.
You give me the thumbs up.
Sure. Sounds good.
Those two, photography and
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the memorial service for Mark Ellens. We've come together today to comfort one another and to join in mourning the early loss of a loving husband, a father, son, brother, colleague, and friend, and to celebrate his remarkable and well-lived life. To Mark's family, on behalf of everyone attending today, our hearts go out to you as you deal with this tremendous loss. Mark was an incredible person who touched the lives of many people, as evident by how many people are here today and joining the live stream. Although you know this already, I hope we can convey to you how special he was to us. The service today is designed, or optimized, as Mark would often say, to honor him and celebrate his life. The music you hear playing from the pianist is from his favorite album, the Rock of Ages soundtrack. You might have heard some ABBA being played, as he loved to cook to their greatest hits, as well as Elton John. Several people from different parts of Mark's life will come up and share stories and impressions of him. His sister Colleen, nieces Hannah and Andrea, best friend David, and colleagues Mike Ure and myself, Mike Moratine. The stories and sharing are meant to give his sons, Matthew and Nicholas, insight into their father and secondhand memories to enjoy as their time with him was cut short. There won't be an open mic portion in the service, but there will be opportunities for people to share afterwards during the reception, and those will be recorded for future viewing for the benefit of his sons. And I'll speak about that a little bit later. The band Whitesnake has a fitting lyric in the song Here I Go Again from the Rock of Ages soundtrack, where it says, "I've made up my mind, I ain't wasting no more time." Although it wasn't for as long as we would have hoped, Mark lived a full life and didn't waste time, especially in these past 2 years. That's a great takeaway for all of us. You'll see this theme as I read the story of Mark's full life. If you like, you can follow along in the program, but I'm just going to read this out to you all. Mark William Ellens died peacefully, surrounded by his loving family, on December 26, 2025, after living with cancer for 2 years. Mark leaves behind a lasting legacy of deep love for family, a lifelong pursuit of learning, and a passion for sharing knowledge and nurturing the talents of others. Mark was born and raised in Abbotsford, where he enjoyed a close relationship with his parents, Lorraine and Bill, and his sister Colleen. From an early age, Mark was active and curious, excelling in academics, piano, and sports, including wrestling and dirt biking, and volunteering with St. John Ambulance. He approached everything he did with focus, enthusiasm, and quiet excellence. Mark graduated from W.J. Mowat Secondary School and then attended Fraser Valley College for a year on scholarship. After transferring to the University of Victoria, he completed a degree in mechanical engineering and started his master's degree. While working on his master's, Mark co-founded a company that collected and analyzed data at stress points on structures ranging from bicycle components to helicopter landing gear, an endeavor that was also the basis for many of his subsequent enthusiastic discourses on mechanical stress. In 1997, Mark married the love of his life, Catherine Lowing. Together, they built a life full of love, curiosity, travel, and learning, and they later welcomed 2 sons, Matthew and Nicholas, who were the pride and joy of Mark's life. In 1999, Mark transitioned to working for one of his clients, Teleflex, now Dometic, where he spent over 25 years contributing his expertise, integrity, and leadership as a mechanical engineer and manager. Ever the teacher, Mark shared his knowledge generously with anyone he encountered. His zeal for learning and teaching extended from mentoring engineering students at UBC to hiring and guiding numerous co-op students to developing and presenting workplace teaching sessions. At home, there was no subject too mundane to learn about or talk about. He also found time to coach soccer, and not content to just blow a whistle, Mark spent countless hours creating coaching materials and serving on the club's board of directors. Mark's thirst for discovering and experiencing new things led him to cycle through New Zealand and across Canada, which we're going to hear a little bit about later in David's sharing. Drive around Australia and explore Southeast Asia and Europe. Just 2 weeks before his passing, Mark returned home from a 10-day family adventure in France, during which he again proved there's always something to learn and teach, as he pontificated on the engineering of the Roman aqueduct Pont du Gard, how the Romans determined elevation, extracted the stones, and lifted them into place. Mark loved great coffee, good food, mountain biking, boating, and gentle perfection. If he did something, he did it right. He sought out, embraced, and celebrated the strengths in everyone he met. He made people feel capable, valued, and loved. He was well-read and metaphorical, and he lived life to its fullest. Cerebral and analytical by nature, Mark combined intellect with kindness, patience, and an unwavering dedication to his family. Indeed, Mark didn't waste his time. At this point, we're going to move to personal sharing about Mark's life, and I'd like to invite Colleen up to share.
That? Okay. Catherine? Yeah? Matthew? Nicholas? It's all blurry. As I wrote this, I imagined how hard this was going to be to read this to you. Please be patient with me. I've shed many tears remembering and writing these stories. Mark was my brother, my only brother. Initially, I thought I might talk about how wise and cerebral he was, and he truly was. But Mark was also funny, quietly funny. So I want to share a few memories that capture that side of him as well. Mark and I grew up in Abbotsford, spending much of our childhood in the wooded acreage of Brookside Avenue. We were outside constantly, and many of my fondest memories come from that time. Mark had an overwhelming and possibly debilitating fear of animals, including geese. We were little and playing in a culvert when we must have disturbed some nesting Canadian geese. They aggressively came at us, and Mark and I scrambled into the car. The geese pecked at the doors and pecked at the tires. Needless to say, we were both traumatized, and Mark's fear of animals was permanently validated. I need a tissue. Sorry. We had 3 cats. Catherine, you know where I'm going with this one. We had 3 cats, including an all-black one named Pepper, the most unpredictable of them all. Mark was convinced Pepper was out to get him. He would tell the story of Pepper doing parkour down through the stairwell banister, flying down the hallway with one paw on the banister post and the other paw outstretched, attacking Mark, and then would disappear back through the railing, unseen by anyone else. We had a German Shepherd, Sasha, who wore the house key on her collar. Though the key occasionally went missing, Mark figured out how to shimmy open a tiny window with a loose latch. Mark would lift me up and push me through the window until one day, when my hips were too wide and I no longer fit. We played street hockey and built tree forts. We picked blackberries, with Mark trying to carry me on his shoulders so I could reach the best berries. He waxed our inner tube for sledding with candle wax, so we would go faster and farther down the steep hill. The appeal of wheels and motors was strong for Mark. He had a dirt bike and spent countless hours, probably months in total, grooming the trails on our property. He built berms and jumps, including one infamous calculated jump with a large hole after it. Mark practically begged Mom, unsuccessfully, to lie down in the hole so she could get a skyward photo of him jumping over her. That never happened. Well, the picture never happened, that is. Mark was very involved in St. John Ambulance, though he was far too modest to probably talk about it. In high school, a window shattered and a piece of glass severed a girl's femoral artery. Mark saved her life. He received an award for it, but you probably had never heard him talk of this. We went on family camping road trips every summer for 2 weeks with Dad at the wheel. Mark and I would lie on our stomachs on the top bunk, peering out the front window, you know, the one above the driver's seat, collecting license plates from different provinces and states. It only occurred to us later that we were essentially projectiles waiting to be launched. One night, Dad took us up to the power lines near our house, carrying fluorescent tubes. With our hands on either end, the tubes would light up from the electricity in the air. It felt like Star Wars, one of Mark's favorites. Mark was wise and kind. When I was in high school trying to figure out what was next, he told me, rather than just going into sciences, choose something more specific. You can always change your mind. This was the best advice ever. His mentoring and career advice didn't stop there. Mark loved the aluminum boat from Catherine's dad. One day on Saturna Island, we took the boat out with all 4 kids, Matthew, Nicholas, Lucas, Camille, along with a picnic, all cozied into a boat that was definitely too small for so many people. We followed a much larger whale-watching boats into the international shipping lane in search of whales. And to set the stage for this one, Mark had a paralyzing fear of authority, especially border guards. Well, soon enough, a very large, jointly crewed boat approached us, staffed by officers from both the RCMP and the United States Coast Guard. Mark was shaking terribly as he tried to pull his boating license out of his wallet, and all they said to us was, "Oh, just checking to make sure you're wearing your life jackets." And away they went. So we continued on, only to have the boat engine quit. Remember that? At this point, we were probably in American waters. Calmly, after some problem solving that felt like forever to the kids and me, Mark and Catherine got us back on our way. I could go on sharing so many stories, but I'm going to stop here. That was Mark, fearful yet brave, thoughtful, capable, wise, funny, kind, and steady when it mattered most. He was my brother, my only brother. And I'll miss him more than words can say. We love you, Mark.
Thank you for that sharing. I'd like to invite his nieces to come up and share as well.
Hello, my name is Hannah, and this is Andrea, and it's an honor to stand up here today as 2 of Mark's nieces on the Loewen side of the family. We're going to try to articulate our love for Uncle Mark and put into words what he meant to our family. When Mark became a part of the Loewen crowd, I can only imagine it would have been a daunting introduction. We aren't known for being a particularly quiet or well-mannered group, but that didn't stop Mark. He paved the way for all of our partners, and set the example of what it meant to join the Lowings. He put so much work, love, and care into our family. He had a unique way of building relationships with each person. He always went out of his way to make you feel included and to take part in your interests. Even as a child, I remember feeling so valued by him. He went out of his way to spend time with each of us. I remember so fondly. Being young and having him teach me how to tune up my bike and building toboggan tracks in the front yard.
Mark also brought an attention to detail and a level of precision that wasn't common amongst the Lowings. Catherine and her siblings were raised by a man whose motto was, "We'll sneak up on it." Mark was, in some ways, the opposite, approaching things in a scientific way that eventually won our grandfather over. Take cooking as an example. Mark set out to capture the cooking knowledge of Catherine's brother, Pat, who is a professional chef. Mark couldn't settle for Pat's laid-back, casual approach to cooking, which didn't involve exact measurements or set times. He managed to document many of Pat's recipes on paper so that he and the whole family could recreate them in an exact way. Uncle Mark also brought the Food Lab into our lives. The Food Lab is a cookbook that reviews the science of cooking and prescribes the optimal way of preparing a dish. The cookbook originally lived in the Ellens household, but was picked up by our grandfather and quickly became what he referred to as the good book. Going forward, virtually all recipes cooked by our grandfather came from the good book. Mark's methodical, detail-oriented approach had won him over. But Mark's influence didn't stop there. I have continued to cook out of the Food Lab. And those recipes have been passed on to friends and who have since gifted their loved ones that cookbook.
Camping in the Northwest Territories was another beloved activity amongst our family. We spent many summers boating, particularly in Mark's favorite of the fleet, the yellow rubber inflatable. Countless hours were spent paddling around in that yellow boat until the boys were eventually old enough that an outboard motor was added to the back. Adventure was always a huge part of Uncle Mark's life, and we loved hearing his stories of biking in New Zealand and Canada, hiking, and all other outdoor adventures. He inspired us to do many of the activities and adventures that we continue to do today. We will cherish every memory of berry picking, hiking, boating, and fishing with him.
Mark was also an amazing teacher to all of us. I'm sure many of you here today may have known him in a professional capacity and would have had the privilege of being taught by him. But his love of teaching extended into our family. He had a subtle way of drawing us kids into what we thought was just playing, and then teaching us the science behind the vinegar and baking soda rockets we were making. His teaching continued as we got older, from the science of how to properly make and drink coffee, to managing our finances, or navigating big life decisions. He made a point to tailor his teachings, always figuring out how you learned best, and then seeking out what you were interested in learning.
While this void his death has left feels unfillable, the loss only feels this big because he had such a big place in each of our hearts. The depth of loss is directly related to the depth of love that we have. Mark lives on in our lives in little ways that impact each of us every day. We think of him every morning when we make coffee or when we make eggs the special Mark way. We think of him when we cook and use a really nice sharp kitchen knife. We'll miss him when we're tinkering on our bikes, buying cultured butter, and discussing Lean Sigma 6 at work. Whether everyday life or traveling adventures, Uncle Mark will always hold a place in our lives.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Garrison. Everyone here knows Mark loved travel and adventure, so I want to tell you about a special trip we did together in 1994. I don't remember the very first time I met Mark. We were both engineering students at UVic, and our cohort was only around 100 students, so you just kind of got to know everybody. But what I do remember for sure is in the summer of 1991, we both secured fall work terms in Ottawa, so we decided to find a place together. I knew Mark had done a cycling trip in New Zealand before coming to UVic, and I was keen on cycle touring as well, so we decided to take our bikes with us to Ottawa and do a weekend trip in Gatineau Park, which we did, and we had a blast. At some point in the next couple of years, we decided to do a much bigger trip. After graduation, we'd take 3 months, June, July, and August, and cycle from St. John's to Victoria. As the trip approached, though, an issue arose. In September, Mark would be starting his master's at UVic, while Kath would be starting the occupational therapy program at UBC. He wanted to spend all of August with Kath, so he was only going to do 2 months. In the end, we settled on a not quite cross-country trip. Neither of us had been to Atlantic Canada, so we decided to do a circuitous route through all the Atlantic provinces, as well as around the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec, before heading to Ottawa. From there, we'd skip all of Ontario by taking a bus to Winnipeg. Then we'd ride until July 30th, and Kath would pick us up, or pick Mark up, wherever we happened to be. At that point, I hadn't decided if I'd finish the trip with him or hitch a ride home. We were excited to embark on this adventure together. We were young, free of responsibilities for the summer, and keen to explore Canada. But there was some trepidation too. Spending 2 months in close quarters can put a strain on any friendship. So how did the trip go? Thankfully, I kept a journal. So here are some entries directly from it. As I read these, some photos will play on the screen. They are in chronological order, but won't directly match the journal entries. Please go ahead and start the video. Day 1, we landed in St. John's at the wonderful hour of 5 a.m. It took us 2 hours to get our bikes and put them together, so we did not pedal away from the airport until 7:15 a.m. We went straight to CA Pippi Park, where we set up camp and went to sleep. Day 3, 78 kilometers, 3 hours, 15 minutes in the saddle. Once again, woke to heavy rain. We ate breakfast of what we dubbed President's Choice Recycled Forest Products milk-phobic cereal in the tent, which, according to Mark, tasted like toilet paper. I teased Mark about being here instead of home snuggling with Kath, and he replied, "I'm here, freezing my ass off, smelling like shit, and eating crap." We hadn't showered since leaving Vancouver. Day 4, 130 kilometers, 6.5 hours in the saddle. We stopped at a payphone in Clarenville so Mark could call Kath. We had to really put the pedal to the metal to make the 12:30 cutoff time corresponding to 8 a.m. back home and thus cheap phone rates, but we did make it. Day 7, we had a dinner of pasta again. That's 6 out of 7 nights, quickly before the rain and retreating to our tent. Day 14, Cape Breton Island. For lunch, we had a 3-way blind taste test of fruit cocktails. There was no clear winner. Day 17, we were in a good rhythm and we kept a good conversation going. Day 18, death to all black flies. They are insufferable. Day 19, 210 kilometers over 9 hours in the saddle, finishing in Halifax, our longest day of the trip. Things were going well. We were yabbering the whole way and we had a good rhythm. Day 24, We ate lunch in Charlottetown. I had a burger and fries plus a side salad. Mark had a burrito with salad plus a side salad. Then we split an order of nachos and an order of potato skins. Day 25. Today will be remembered as the day we met Tom and Joyce Lemire. These inept tandemists, as they called themselves, were on an extended cycle tour of the Maritimes from their home in Bend, Oregon. I figure they were in their 50s as they had adult children in their 20s. The neatest thing about them is that we could relate on an intellectual level. Over the past several days, Mark and I have been philosophizing about pretty much everything, but in particular the career lifestyle question. Here were two people who are living the lifestyle, and it was really cool to see. Day 27, New Brunswick. At 2 in the morning, Mark was woken to noises by our bikes. He grabbed his flashlight and looked out and saw a raccoon eating from his food bag. It had chewed a hole in the bottom of his handlebar bag and eaten a whole power bar, some trail mix, a Snickers bar, and in the sink, and then hang it to dry. First, make sure it's not going to rain. Day 33. Today we encountered our steepest climb yet, 17% coming out of Per Se, Quebec. The owner of the campground last night warned us about this hill and said we would have to walk our bikes up it. I never believe people when they tell us this because they don't know our level of fitness or the kind of gearing our bikes have. In this case, though, he was close, but we did make it up without walking. That evening we walked along the beach and Mark wrote "I heart Kath" in the sand and took a photo of it. Day 34. We didn't get a very early start because Mark had to make a short call to Kath, which took an hour. Day 35, set our speed record going down a 15% grade, 87 kilometers an hour, which in retrospect on those bikes was a bad idea. But Day 37, most of the day was flat, but Mark and I were able to keep each other occupied, yabbering and yabbering lots. Day 39, La Malbaie, Quebec. The day's ride began with rain, a strong headwind, and very heavy traffic on a small shoulderless road. Not a friendly combination. Riding in this stuff is a slogfest. You can't talk to your riding partner and you can't enjoy the scenery either. And that was the last day I wrote in my journal, or so I thought. I hadn't actually opened the journal since I wrote it 32 years ago, but I knew I hadn't kept it up the whole time, so as I was reading it for the first time in preparation for this speech, I just assumed that was it. But I flipped through the pages to see if there was anything else, and I found one final entry. Sorry. Day 57, Lanigan, Saskatchewan. I think I have decided for good now to cut the trip short and return to Victoria early. My biggest dilemma in doing this was that I feared I would not be doing justice to the trip, that is, the idea of riding coast to coast. But I've realized this trip was never about cycling across Canada. This trip was about personal growth and finding ourselves. We have logged well over 200 hours in the saddle, and most of this time was used to talk about life, about who we are and what it means to be us, and to philosophize about everything, from the way women are portrayed in the media to what it means to be a man, to whether TV violence has an effect on children. To this end, the trip has been a success. 3 days later, Kath would pick us up in Kindersley, Saskatchewan, and we'd drive off into the proverbial sunset. So after 60 days, 200 hours in the saddle, and 5,000 kilometers, some things about Mark were clear. It was true love with Kath. We'd never, ever run out of things to talk about, and we'd be lifelong friends. Thanks, Mark, for the trip and a friendship of a lifetime. Thank you.
My name's Mike Ewer. I worked with Mark for 20 years, and in that time we became close friends. It's an honor to be here to say a few words about my friend today. Mark and I first met 24 years ago at a training seminar, Six Sigma actually. I remember the immediate impression he made on me with his commitment to the course material, the way he interacted with the rest of the class and the instructor. This is the guy who clearly cared about stuff, and that personal focus and engagement were things that I would see again and again as long as I knew him. Later in life, we came to work together, and I saw that commitment again. I saw him use it with his colleagues, with his team members, with his many proteges. He's known as the guy that you call for help with anything. He helped me with many challenges, personal and professional. He often claimed not to be an expert in many things, but he had the tools, and he was happy to share how to approach and overcome those challenges. He inspired people how to learn rather than providing answers for them. One time I approached Mark with a technical problem I was having. It was related to metal fatigue in aluminum alloys. Stay awake. In typical Mark style, he says, "Well, I don't know much about that topic, but you go away, do some reading about it, come back in a week, I'll do the same, and we'll work through a plan together." In the course of doing my research, I found an academic paper on that very topic I was struggling with. It provided a lot of the background information I'd been looking for. It took me a little while to realize that one of the authors of that paper was Mark Ellens. He literally wrote the book on the topic. It was typical of his soft-spoken humility, and it always makes me laugh. Mark had a passion for methodical approaches to problems, as we all know. He never half-assed anything when he took it on. This made him easy to troll. A colleague and I used to joke that the best way to push Mark's buttons was to tell him, "You're working on a really complex problem with many variables, but I'm just going to try a few things and see what happens. Just wing it." It would drive him nuts. He didn't provide Band-Aid solutions. If he was involved, it was going to be done right. At work, Mark always wanted to make sure he was able to pass on the many lessons he learned and the technical information that he gained from his many years of experience. Despite his diagnosis and his health challenges, he did that. He delivered a series of seminars and documentation that people at my workplace use every day. He cared about the legacy he would leave behind, and he used that ever-present focus to make sure it was done right. Our kids are similar ages, so Mark and I spent a lot of time talking about parenting, family travel, movies. When we were both coaching soccer, he was happy to share a practice drill when I needed one for practice. Despite all his interest in science, engineering, and technical topics, his true passion showed up when he talked about his family. Catherine and the boys were clearly the center of his life. He was incredibly proud of Matthew and Nicholas. After Mark's diagnosis, we stopped working together, but he reached out and made sure that we still kept in touch. We'd meet regularly for coffee or dinner. We talked about the same things: family, movies, travel, and now his health. In the face of such a terrible and frightening prognosis, Mark showed incredible stoicism, dignity, and an ever-present ironic sense of humor. Every time we met, Mark was focused and engaged. It reminded me of when we first met 24 years ago. Mark inspired many people in this room in the same way. I'm privileged to have been his friend, and I'll miss him. Thank you.
As I said earlier, my name is Mike Moratine, and I worked with Mark for over 25 years at Dometic. So Matthew and Nicholas, I don't have particular stories to share, but just different aspects of your dad that I wanted to mention to you. Firstly, your dad was a hoarder. I went into his office to get some things for today, in the reception, and I got immediately overwhelmed. It's packed with books and parts and stuff, Kaizen event things and flip charts and Palm Pilots from like 1995. I don't know how he worked in it. But on the wall were your pictures and your art, and obviously a picture of you, Catherine. He would often talk about you guys when we got together, and it was clear that he was proud of you. And it's important that you know that. I'm sure you do, but I hope you hear that from us, that he's proud of you. Historically, your dad was the fixer, and often he was called in to optimize something, which means fix somebody else's mistake and make a design better and actually manufacturable, which is kind of hard to do, actually. And let's just say there was a lot of work for him at our company, and he was exceptional at it. The reason his office was so messy is that he touched so many products and different projects over the years, quite literally too many to mention. He was the guy who was smart enough and had the tenacity to get to the root cause and truly solve problems. And that was unique, and he was passionate about doing it. Your dad made a 100-page bolt design guide, a 30-page spring design guide, and many other training aids because he was considering retiring and wanted to pass on the wealth of information that he collected over the years. He cared about legacy, empowering others, and making things better, or maximizing his #1 strength. I didn't have the heart to tell him there's no way engineers are going to read a 100-page bolt design guide, but having said that, I still have his stats notes, a statistics course notes from 2004 that they're on display in the reception, and I found them more useful than my university course, so we do go back to those things. Your dad taught me to say, interesting, in conversations with people. He said it a lot. I wondered if he thought like I was saying something dumb and he was just trying to buy time to figure out how to reply. And it might be true, actually. But he processed deeply what you were saying. Spending time to understand, avoiding giving pat answers, which took consideration, genuine interest, and care, and made you feel good, valued, loved, and capable, as it was written in the obituary. Your dad meant a lot to me. He was essentially my mentor for 25 years and helped me navigate my way through my career and find meaning in what I do. We make parts for rich guys' boats. Okay, it's not a noble effort. But he helped me see how identifying and playing to your strengths can bring fulfillment, and how taking that to your team and other people can bring even greater reward. At my lowest and most frustrated points, he was there for me. He could see it on my face. And he'd send me a message saying, hey there, wanna chat? And those ended up being multi-hour deep dives and super long conversations. He got me to do StrengthsFinder and engagement surveys and strength deployment inventory and all these things. He suggested coaching courses. He suggested books. He gave leadership advice. We ended up talking about all aspects of life, marriage, parenting, travel. He was essentially my travel agent. We'd duplicated a trip you guys did. Toastmasters, barf bag stories that he shared, coaching, retirement, and in the end we talked about cancer. He was one of the most influential people in my life, and he did it with a quiet, gentle, and caring spirit. I'm sad he's gone, but was blessed to have known him. He left a good example for you guys to follow, except the hoarding. Although, Nicholas, it might be too late. Thank you. I'd like to invite the family to come up and say some words now.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Nicholas, and this is Matthew. We are his sons. I'm the youngest. We would like to thank you all for coming out today to remember our father and for the positive impact you all made on his life. My brother, and my brother will now have a few words to share.
Hello. So, as many of you know, our dad was a big part of our life. He shaped who we are. He shaped how we act, how we see the world, how we interact with it. He always was proud of us for, learning from him, and he always had stuff to share. It was really wonderful. And just through his love, care, and affection, we were made, basically. And we are sure his influence has carried through to all of you as well. We just want to take this opportunity just to thank you all for coming and for showing your support. Many of you have shown support by being here. Some of you have shown support directly to us, the family. And we just wanted to say that it means a lot, and we are really grateful that all of you are here and you've just helped us all so much. So thank you very much.
I'd like to close out this service with a quote, not from the Rock of Ages soundtrack, but from a book that Mark often suggested, Good to Great by Jim Collins, and I think you'll find it appropriate. When what you are deeply passionate about and what you can be the best in the world at come together, not only does your work move towards greatness, but so does your life. For in the end, it is impossible to have a great life unless it is a meaningful life. Perhaps then you might gain that rare tranquility that comes from knowing that you've had a hand in creating something of intrinsic excellence that makes a contribution. Indeed, you might even gain that deepest of all satisfaction, knowing that your short time here on this earth has been well spent and that it mattered. I think it's safe to say that Mark contributed to all of our lives because he found meaning in people and helping others. As a result, his short time on earth was well spent and his time not wasted. His life mattered and he will be missed. Again, thank you so much for coming today and joining to celebrate Mark's life and to make this celebration special for his family. There's a reception to follow. It'll be out these doors down to the right, but I've got some closing announcements. First one is regarding video tributes. And so there's two ways to offer video tributes and memories and stories of Mark. So there's a room just outside those main doors where people can go in and you can share a private message one at a time. There's a videographer there, and you can share those stories, and they'll be available for his family for future viewing. If you're comfortable with sharing in public, there'll be a microphone set up in the reception area, and those will also be recorded. If you haven't had a chance to sign the memoriam book, it will be transferred to the reception room, and you can put your name and any remarks in there. Also in the reception room, you'll find pictures and articles from various aspects of Mark's life, including Palm Pilots from 1995. Lastly, Mark will remain in this chapel if you wish to pay respects before entering the reception, or if you want to come back out and have some time with him. He will be here. At this point, I'd like to invite Mark's family to pay their respects first through the laying of flowers, and then we'll proceed row by row to the reception as directed by the staff. Thank you.